Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back to TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shilanski in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, and today we're going to have a little bit of fun. We are going to be talking about confirmation bias and how we get to use that to help us be better financial professionals. And so you're just going to have to stay with me because this one's going to involve circuses, astrological zodiac signs, and communication policies. But I promise by the end, you're going to see how they all tie together. All right, so let's start off with this. I'm going to read to you a zodiac sign, and you are going to make a decision because you've listened to me on this podcast episodes several weeks now. And if not, you need to go back and subscribe to all of those episodes because we produce some really amazing content. We hear about it from our nation members all of the time, hitting us up on LinkedIn. That's mostly where the Perfect RIA can be found. We don't really do much other social channels, but you can always tag Matthew Jarvis or theperfectria.com on LinkedIn. And of course, we are constantly hearing from financial advisors and their team members just like you when they email us at lifestyle@theperfectria.com about content that they find the most valuable. All right, so I'm going to dive into this. If you've listened to me before, then you might already have a little bit preconceived notion of who you think I am. And you're going to see if this is my astrological sign. All right, this particular sign is a natural leader. They are entrepreneurs, are dynamic, their high energy is infectious, they are ambitious, driven, and possess a strong work ethic. Many find themselves in managerial roles or leadership roles within organizations. They are competitive, enthusiastic, and commission-based model is usually the most suitable for them. And they excel in business related to project management, advertising, broadcasting scenarios. All right, that is one sign. Here's the second sign that I'm going to read to you. All right, here's the second zodiac sign. In business, these people are personable, trustworthy. They're good at being able to return their failures around. They are also able to bring out the best in other human beings. Generally, people like dealing with this astrological sign because they make for successful business relationships. They are entrepreneurs. They are honest. They are enjoying taking risks, and they like to be the center of attention. They usually work independently well, will be at their best in careers related to tourism, real estate, fashion, interior design, government, and sales. Now, had I been doing a blind study with myself and I covered up these astrological signs and I just read the statements, guess what would happen? I would start to identify with both of these astrological signs. Now, it's impossible for me to be born during both of those periods, but I would identify with all of these generalized statements about who these individuals are. So the first sign that I gave you is the Aries, March 21st to April 19th. The second sign I gave you was for a Leo, and Leos are July 23rd to August 22nd. And in reading both of those, you can begin to pick up on the things that you want to believe about yourself. So in the Aries, I began to identify right off the bat. I mean, hook, line, and sinker, natural leader, entrepreneur, dynamic, high energy, infectious, ambitious. I was like, yes, strong work ethic. Boom, I'm done. That's me. Whatever zodiac sign this is for, that is me to a T. But then when we drop down to that Leo, and it said they're personable, trustworthy, good at being able to turn their failures around. They bring out the best in people. I was like, oh my gosh, that's also me. And why? Why is that? We do that because we have what's referred to as confirmational bias. We want to believe what we want to believe about ourselves. And so when we look at these astrological signs, and by the way, this is a huge, massive industry. I mean, people believing in astrology and zodiac signs. I mean, what is this? This is a $2.2 billion industry as of 2018 and has only continued to grow. And you have to really ask yourself, why? Why even in Christian believers, why even in people of different walks of different faiths, do we constantly go back and say, oh, it must be something with the sun. It must be something with the moon. It must be something with, being in alignment with other planets. And it must have something to do with your zodiac sign. In fact, we read these for fun sometimes in our family. We will do, I think they probably come up once a year. My spouse, my son, and I will just kind of joke and laugh and be like, oh, this is you. This is definitely you. When we start reading these zodiac signs and the characteristics of them. Because it's entertaining. And it also gives us a really quick way to generalize the qualities that we want to see in ourselves. So recently I was listening to one of my favorite speakers on a ton of subjects, Angela Duckworth. She wrote the book Grit. If you haven't read that or listened to it, download it. It's so gosh darn good. But she is a big believer of the system 1, system 2, and she does a lot of behavioral science research. And so Angela was sharing with me that she had been studying a professor of behavioral science at the University of Chicago. And what was being discussed was, why do we sometimes believe what we do not believe? So even if we don't believe in zodiac signs, even if we don't believe in psychics or any of that, or Ouija boards or random cards or fortune cookies, right? You're going to be asked a really hard question today. Why do we believe in what we don't believe? Now, we're all skeptical of these pseudosciences. We're all a little bit on the untrustworthy, but then something happens and we're like, oh my gosh, must be the stars, must be your fortune coming true, must be predictive. What is this about us as humans that we want to believe in something we would otherwise find false? We would otherwise say, no, this doesn't exist. So Angela goes on to explain that in this behavioral science class, they're talking about system 1 and system 2 thinking. Now, if any of you have read, oh my gosh, I'm just giving you all the books today, but Thinking Fast and Slow. And by the way, side note, this is the book I am most gifted. And the first time that somebody gave it to me, I thought they were intending me to slow down. And because I just read the title, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. And I was like, oh, I think too fast. And somebody's suggesting to me that I need to slow down. But when you read the book, it talks about system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. The content of this book is phenomenal. This is a really, really great one to read, and also a really great one for young adults to read. It's a little complex for them, so you have to kind of break it down and do kind of like a book study, but good for them to start learning their brain and how the different sides of the brain start to really formulate thoughts and ideas and what confirmation bias is in its essence. So it was not an insult, even though I have, I think, 4 copies of this book on my bookshelf today. And that's, even though I keep regifting it and trying to give this book away, people keep bringing it back into my life, which is, I think, is amazing. So as a quick little recap, a system 1 thinking is near instantaneous thinking. I mean, it is gut reaction. It happens automatically. It's intuitive. We give it very little effort. Moms are natural system 1 thinking. Watch a mom when the kids get home from school in the kitchen, and you will see system 1 thinking at its absolute best, because they're carrying on multiple conversations. They're trying to get meals prepped. They're trying to go through backpacks and figure out what needs to be signed, read emails. I mean, they're great intuitive thinkers. System 2 is slower thinking. It requires more effort. It's about conscientious awareness, and it's about logical, systemized processes. Now, unlike other behavioral sciences that say introvert, extrovert, you are not if this, then that. You are not only a system 1 thinker or only a system 2 thinker. You are both types of thinkers. In fact, I laugh about this a lot because our integrator at Shilanski Associates, our RIA up in Anchorage, Alaska, we've worked together for 27 years. And in 27 years, she knew me when I was 15 years old-ish, you know? So this is when we started working together, when I started doing filing and cold calling and stuff like that at the office. By the way, Micah Shilanski is my baby brother. We are not Nepo babies. Nothing in our life was handed to us. And if you think it was, you have not met our parents who made sure we understood the value of hard work, and we had to work twice as hard as everyone else. So when I started working at our office, Charnel was my boss. And I didn't report to mom or dad. I reported to Charnel. And it was funny because at the time I was so heavily system 1 thinking, like just fast, impulsive, as the nature of being a 15, 16-year-old normally is. And because of this, I lacked the ability to be detail-oriented. I wouldn't slow myself down enough to be detail-oriented. But as I grew professionally, as I graduated different levels of education and began to draft business plans and to write papers and to develop content and to create processes, I couldn't just be intuitive and spontaneous and instantaneous. I had to be critical and logical and write my processes down in great detail. In fact, I write down in so much detail that if I step away from something, somebody else can pick up right where I left off and be able to complete it. That's my goal. My goal is to make myself replaceable. And I can only do that by the level of attention that I give my subject matter. What shocks her to this day is that from having grown up with me essentially and seeing that I was just so impulsively a system 1 thinker, how well I adapted to becoming a system 2 thinker. And that is why when people say, oh, I'm not detail oriented, you can be. It's just training. It's just brain muscle. It's just you willing to dedicate yourself to becoming that. There are things that you're just not going to be able to do in life that don't come intuitively, but training your brain is not one of them. It's just hard. The brain is lazy. It's so freaking awesome, but it's lazy. It will always take the easiest path. It will take the path of least resistance every single time that you let it. And so you have to be dedicated to understanding things. So receiving the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, learning about system 1, learning about system 2, I was able then to tell my brain how we were going to train ourselves. And then, of course, reading as much content on the subject as possible so that I was able to make sure that I was wired to do what my team needed me to do in order to lead the organization that I have to a multi-million-dollar status. So unlike other social sciences saying you're this or that, you are both a system 1 and a system 2 thinker. Even if you are the type of person that's like, Jamie, I do not relate to you whatsoever because I overthink everything. I spend all of my time overthinking things and I cannot jump to a conclusion. You still have a system 1 engaged. This is the reason if you're walking down the street with your friend and you notice your shoe's untied, you don't stop conversation, but you get out of the crosswalk and you tie your shoe. That's system 1 thinking. System 1 thinking is intuitive. It doesn't have to be slowed down. You know that you can't tie your shoe in the crosswalk because of these dangers, and it's going to keep you out of danger to be a system 1 thinker. It is your gut instinct. Now, system 2 thinking is still incorporated in people that generally gravitate towards being a system 1 thinker. This is the reason we can find people in crowds. You could put us in Disneyland and we will start looking for the person, even though if the person that you're with is in a red jacket, you will constantly search that crowd and you will find the right person. That's a system 2 thinker. You will look at all the red jackets. You will eliminate the ones that don't match the make and model of the person that you're looking for. And then you will find the appropriate person. Pro tip for you parents out there, and it is a sick fact I wish I did not have to share, but spending some time with law enforcement agents, I was able to discern what is the number one thing that they wish parents did when children were abducted. And that was to take a picture of them in their outfit ahead of time, because oftentimes when children are taken, their clothes and their hair are changed, but their shoes never are. So they will often quickly start looking for the shoes. But a lot of times as parents, we forget what shoes look like or forget how to describe them to people. And the shoes is the number one way that they are able to catch children who have been abducted, especially in large social settings. So that's a creepy, awful fact for you to now know. Okay, so what does system 1 and system 2 thinking have to do with zodiac signs? Well, when I read those 2 zodiac signs to you, and I'm only one of them, I began to quickly identify with all the characteristics that I wanted to see in myself. Now, I chose both of those as characteristics that I want to identify with because that was my confirmation bias. That was my system 1 thinking. That was me going, oh yeah, that is you, that is you, that is you. And this is also the reason that if you sat down and did a blind study of different zodiac signs and just pick 3 and sit down with your spouse, this is a fun game. Now, you know, I often warn you what to do and not do with your spouse. This is actually a fun one to do with your spouse and your family members. If you have teens in the house, totally do this because this is entertaining for them as well. So pick out 3 zodiac signs, read the descriptions of them, but do a blind study, cover up who the dates of the birth dates that they fall under, and then what the signs actually are. And then go around and have the person tell them which one they most identify with, and then have the other participants say which ones that fit that person more. Because the ones that you pick out for yourself are often not the same as a loved one would pick out for you because they're seeing a different side of you. When you are inside your own brain, you know what you're valuing and identifying with. But when somebody else is assessing your character or knowing your personality traits, that is their, so you are operating at system 1, they are operating at system 2. They are being discerning. They're really passing it through a filter and saying, does this person identify with this or not? So when I was reading those signs, I was using system 1. I wanted to believe what I wanted to see in myself. But the problem was I didn't have system 2 engaged to tell me, hold on a second, you can't be both. You only get to pick one. Which one more accurately describes you? Now, this level of psychology is deeply rooted in the book called Principles of Psychology. And it's all about associative knowledge being derived from personal experiences. So when we talk about confirmation bias, it's about our past experiences. We are relating things. So for example, you're leaving the house, you're in shorts and a tank top, you look up and the cloud looks dark, or the clouds start to roll in, they're looking really dark. In your mind, you're going through past experiences of saying, hey, these dark clouds mean rain. Therefore, I need to change out of my sandals into something more appropriate for the weather. You didn't check your phone. You didn't do any of that to see if it was actually going to rain in your area. You didn't even assess whether or not the temperature was still warm enough to be in a tank top. You had system one thinking of saying, hey, in my past experiences, these clouds mean torrential downpour. Therefore, I am changing and doing this. So when we look at system one and system two, what are the differences? System one, they're unintentionally. They are subconscious thoughts. They require very small amounts of cognitive resources. You're pulling from past experiences. You're pulling from previous notions. You're pulling from confirmation bias. They can be stopped voluntarily. You can actually pause them. You can put on the brakes and slow it down and say, hold on a second. I don't believe that's true. Let me go back and re-engage my system two process. And because they happen in those fashions, you are able to pump those brakes and control a system one response. Now, system two responses, though, are different. They're elicited intentionally. You have to be cognizant of engaging your brain and putting it into that sort of logical thinking mindset. They pull a lot of cognitive resources because a lot of times system two thinking is having to overcome system one bias. And so you're constantly pulling with, hold on, I'm feeling this way because one time in my past, this person made me also feel this way. But is that what is actually happening right now? So there's this fight against that system one that you're having to do. System two creates a lot of conscious work. You're having to be mindful of engaging system two. Okay, TPR Nation, I said you're going to have to follow me on this one because you're going down the rabbit hole of all these sciences and behavioral strategies. And then now we're going to tie it into marketing and a little bit into the financial planning side of things as well. So remember that we started off talking about zodiac signs, and I gave you two that I could only be one of, but I began to identify with both characteristics because my system one was engaged and I wanted to see what I wanted to see. And so I wasn't doing any system two trying to discern, hold on a second, is that really me? Instead, I was using past experiences, confirmational bias, and making sure that I saw what I wanted to see in those descriptions. So that was my system one completely engaged. Now, my system two would have said, hold on a second, you can't be both. You can only be one. Which of these qualities are you not? And which one are you most likely to be? And I would start dissecting those to be applicable. So that system one is fast, that system two is logical, it's a bit slower. And so we have to be able to train our brains to think in both capacities. So now let's look at how these apply to our marketing and how they impact what we do. All right, so what do you think? Are most buying decisions made on system one, which is impulsive, intuitive, and fast, or system two, which is methodical, logical, and a little bit slower? Come on, system one or system two. When it comes to spending $50,000, are you going to engage system one or system two? Now, I know a great deal of you out there listening are like, Jamie, both. Well, of course you're going to use both. You can't shut off half of your brain, but there's going to be one that you tend to lean to, a system one or system two, when it comes to making financial decisions, when you're making purchasing choices. And you're going to almost always divert to that one, even if you think that you don't or wouldn't or shouldn't. And that is system one. We make almost all of our buying decisions on system one. Why? The brain is lazy. The brain is lazy. We want confirmation bias. We want to take the quickest, easiest route to getting things done constantly. And that is system one. Now, you're going to be like, Jamie, that's not me because I think about all of my decisions. Okay. So let's just say that you have to go into Walmart and the missus sends you off on a cleaning list. Maybe you are the missus and you have to go buy cleaning products. You go down to the cleaning aisle and there are dozens of choices competing for your money. Most of the brands are saying the exact same thing. They're antibacterial, they are natural, they are organic, they are whatever, right? Kills off all this bacteria, blah, blah, blah. All right, most of the packaging is going to give you the exact same product. Now you need to buy glass cleaner. And so you have 7 choices of glass cleaner, the top one being Windex and the bottom one being Glass Off. Which one do you buy? You buy the Windex. You buy the Windex. You don't buy it because it's cheaper. You don't turn it over and read all the active ingredients to make sure all the qualities are the same. Your mind is constantly going to go towards the Windex. Why? Because it's a brand that works. It's a confirmational bias. You like the product, you know it works, you know it costs more, but you don't have to buy it twice and you don't have to do windows twice. All right, Jamie, that's a small purchase. That's a less than $5 purchase. All right, now let's move it over to something bigger. If you think you're going to slow down because you make bigger choices using system 2, that's not always the case. Now, I'm saying not always the case. No, sometimes people really are discerning about how they spend their dollars. But in that system 2 mindset, I think about how we spend tens of thousands of dollars. So next to a house, what is the most expensive purchase that most people in the United States make? A vehicle, a car. So when you're doing a car choice, is it a system 1 or system 2 choice? Well, it's not an impulsive choice. We're not going down to the dealership and buying Bugattis just because. But instead, and this is particularly true of one brand of car. One brand of car has a cult. No, actually, 2 brands of cars have a cult following, in my opinion, and that is Subaru and Jeep. Those are 2 completely different people, but they love to buy the exact same vehicle, the exact same brand over and over and over again. And even my Subaru drivers that walk around with the duct tape on their Patagonia because they absolutely will not replace the jacket for $300, they're still system 1 thinkers. They're going to go right back to buying that Subaru because it's a brand name that they trust. They feel really good about that choice. And then even if they make all the others using system 2, they're still going to make most of their consumer choices by a system 1 way of thinking. And we do this across the board. That's why we trust luxury brands. What did I learn about Toyota in the 80s when they tried to enter the United States and they tried to sell Toyota luxury cars, but they couldn't get it over that sort of $70,000, $80,000 threshold? And I might get some of these details fuzzy, but they had a board meeting and they said, what is the car? So they went back to first principles on this because they couldn't get it sold in the United States for the luxury car costs. And so they said, okay, well, what is it? And they said, well, it's a luxury exported vehicle to the United States. Luxury export US. Lexus. That's how they came up with the name. And when they came up with that name and they rebranded and remarketed to it, people no longer saw Toyota. What they saw instead was a luxury vehicle. And the name was almost inside of it. Lexus, luxury, system 1 thinking. I quickly want to tell myself that this isn't a Toyota. This is a luxury vehicle. That is how powerful understanding the brain and why we're making the decisions we're making is to us. So now let's take all of those concepts and say, okay, what does that have to do with me as a business owner? How do I use system 1 and system 2 thinking in order to relate to my clients and making sure that I'm making really great efforts in my prospecting and as well as my marketing for my brand recognition? All right, so I'm going to give you an example. Shilanski and Associates. If you did not know, Shilanski and Associates was an RA firm up in Anchorage, Alaska, started by our parents, Floyd and Rosa Shilanski, and now being run by my baby brother, Micah Shilanski, and I. What would Shilanski and Associates sound like? What does it sound like? Shilanski and Associates. It sounds like a law firm. My whole adolescence, when I would have to answer the phone, people were looking for attorneys. It sounds like a law firm. It does not sound like a wealth management, financial planning, or investment firm. It doesn't. People had a bias of how they saw and associates, and they saw that as a law firm, as an attorney's office. I remember being in high school with kids that I had grown up with my entire life, and my family would often support financially community events, fundraisers, track and field days, those kind of things. And of course, our company logo would be out there. And all of my friends said, well, ask Jamie, her dad's an attorney. And I was like, my dad is not an attorney. What are you talking about? And they'd be like, don't you own a law firm? So even adolescents, and either they overheard it from their parents or they were making their own confirmational bias, thought it was an attorney's office. Now, am I going to go change the name? No, we're just going to ramp up our marketing. Can that be done? Heck yeah, it can be. Why do I know it can be done? Schlotzsky's Deli. Schlotzsky's Deli. The name of the place is Schlotzsky's. And so I know that that can be done on a reasonable and large scale basis. But if I had been back in the 1980s and I was rewriting this playbook, I would have used the system 1 and system 2 to be able to drive my marketing efforts because people tend to lean towards what is most familiar to them. So when I take that knowledge of system 1 thinking and know that consumers make most of their buying decisions using that intuitive side of them, then I want to apply one more principle to that theory. And that is that people, when they make purchasing decisions, either moving towards pleasure or away from pain. They are moving towards pleasure or away from pain. And so when I'm strategizing, when I'm marketing, when I'm laying things out, I'm using that system one and I'm writing it down on a scratch pad. System one, intuitive, brand recognition, conscientious, instinctive, emotional. And then I draw a big old circle, and on one side it says pain, and on the left side it says pleasure. And I want to move towards or against it. So whatever I'm offering, whatever I'm talking about has to take both of those filters into mind. So think about it in this way. If I said how to avoid insufficient retirement savings. Wow, insufficient retirement savings. What do those words bring to mind? I'm going to stop working. I'm going to stop being in the accumulation stage of my life. I'm going to stop earning income. And oh my gosh, I'm going to be a Walmart greeter because I'm broke and I don't have enough retirement savings. Now, I've spoken to that initial bias, that worry that we have, that emotional fear. And then I'm also talking about the pain. I want to move away from that. That is how important understanding the psychology around how we interpret brands and words and make our decisions, and also get to vote with our dollars. What buying decisions do we make is, especially for financial advisors, we try to overcomplicate things. We try to inflate how important they are instead of just dialing back down to basics. For example, we call our retirement income timeline a retirement income timeline. When are you going to start pulling the levers from your different retirement accounts in order to be able to move away from insufficient retirement savings? We're going to illustrate that by addressing the emotion, making it intuitive, making it instinctive, and using that system one thinking. Now, once we have you bought in on that side of it, will we dive into the mechanics and all the system two stuff about actually how this is going to work? Yes, 100%. But people are going to make immediate decisions, immediate buying decisions based on system one. We're moving away from pain or towards pleasure. That is the only filter that we're using. And then we're going to focus on the customer experience, because customer experience matters when we are dealing with a brand whose reputation we trust. This is the reason that you're driving down the interstate. You forgot to make hotel reservations. You don't pull into the Holiday Inn. You do pull into the Marriott, or you do pull into the Ritz-Carlton. This is, you know what you're going to get with both. You have a system one filter inside of you saying, if I go to that Holiday Inn, I'm going to be in a cheap and dirty and fast, easy, accessible place. If I go to that Ritz-Carlton, I'm going to feel like this is a luxury stopover. I'm going to feel really nourished and really taken care of in a clean environment. And the beautiful part about this is you may never have ever stayed at a Holiday Inn or a Ritz-Carlton. But if I present those two brands to you, your system one thinking is going to make all of those inferences by itself without any type of actual direct experience. You're going to use all the confirmation bias for all the things that you've ever heard, seen, or experienced, and you're going to make a buying decision based on that. That's how important this is to get right. TPR Nation, I told you we were going to have a little bit of fun today and be a little bit all over the board, but hopefully tie it all together in the end. So remember when we talked about these different things, these action items that you can extract from this podcast episode is what we want to believe may not always be true. We're just wanting to believe it. And this happens all of the time in the most subconscious ways that we aren't even aware of. Here's a crazy one. How about toilet seats? Toilet seats, are they clean or full of germs? Are they clean or full of germs? Come on, toilet seats. Yeah, we think they're dirty. We think that they are super, super dirty and full of germs. It's actually not true. Your cell phone has 10 times more germs, according to the University of Arizona, than a toilet seat does. We believe this stuff all of the time. How about my personal favorite, which growing up in Alaska, I must tell, I have spouted off several times, is that when it's deep winter and we're all outside and we've got a little couple of flasks in our parkas, and people are like, oh, I'm awful cold. And I'm like, well, here, and I'll offer them a drink and I'll say, drink till you warm up. Well, alcohol does not warm us up. Alcohol dilates blood vessels, causing the blood to be pumped closer to the top of the skin, which makes our core temperature drop. But the external part, the closest to the skin, feel hotter. Or going outside with a wet head gives you a head cold. No, it doesn't. Or the fact that if you take your beanie off in the wintertime, you're going to lose 20% of your body heat because it's going to escape from your head. No, it does not. Those aren't actual facts. They're just things that we have bought into believing. And our brain allows us to do that. It allows us not even even to challenge those as facts, because that system one is always looking for the easiest, fastest route. And so making sure that we are cognitively aware of that. And when we need to engage system two, training our brain to be able to slow down, to be able to be logical, methodical is an important tool. And we got to be able to make sure, just like any other muscle, it's muscle memory. Hey, we're going to slow down. We're going to go into system two. We're going to do logical. We're going to go through this step by step, and we're going to make sure that we are detail oriented about this subject matter. And then looking at how people make tens of thousands of dollars of buying decisions and using that system one to reinforce certain values, to make sure that people are identifying your brand, your company, your marketing message with that system one emotion in mind. And remembering to use it through the filter of saying people are moving away from pain or towards pleasure. As you sit down and review all of your marketing content, and everything that your office publishes is marketing content, everything. And everything we give as a client deliverable, everything that goes out our door, every envelope that gets sealed in your office is an opportunity for a marketing event. But you have to be able to have these different policies in place to think about how you're going to use this research to promote your brand so that you can change lives. TPR Nation, this is Jamie Shilanski in an episode of Worlds to Conquer. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Before we go, something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA